Hey everyone, we're going to give it just another minute or so. I see a lot of people are logging in, signing in, and the numbers are kind of jumping up there, which is kind of fun and exciting. So we'll just give it another minute or so. All right, good. The numbers look a little, constant there. So I'm going to start. And hi, everyone. I am Mark Bogosian. I am the director of the Quality of Life Grants Program. And I'm really excited today because this is our first reporting webinar for the grantees. And I know you all don't want to hear a whole lot from me, so you're not going to, and you'll have a chance to hear from Parul. And, Parul you've been probably working with Parul throughout the whole, trajectory of your grant so far. So, now you'll actually get a chance to physically see her and meet her. So I just want to give a few comments and notes. We are accepting questions through the Q&A, so please submit those through the Q&A and not through the chat box. It's just easier for us to find. We're going to set aside a lot of time at the end of the day today to answer questions if you have any. And I do want you to know that there is live captioning available. And what you need to do is go down to the bottom of your screen, and there's a little thing that says live transcript CC, and click on that, and that will start the live captioning. So Parul, could you do the next slide for me, please? All right, so as I said, we're all here today for the grantee reporting. This is our first time. We're really excited. So I'm just going to get through my stuff just quickly. We already talked about the question and answer box, and we will definitely hopefully get to all your questions. Briefly, as you all know, the National Paralysis Resource Center, we have been funded through the Administration for Community Living since 2015. And, we would not be able to do this without their support. And we also just always invite you to partake of our resources and our information that we offer through the National Paralysis Resource Center, whether that be through our information specialists or any of our materials. They are all here for you and your constituents and your stakeholders and those that you serve. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Parul Patel, and she will introduce herself, and she's just going to lead you all off. So here you go.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Parul, and I'm responsible for managing the budget changes, no-cost extensions, reviewing and reporting of all interim, as well as final reports, and ultimately closing out the projects. The purpose of this webinar is to offer guidance on how to complete the final report for the awarded grant. I will go through each of these 4 items: report reminders, accessing the report and the portal, final report questions, how to respond, by way of some examples, as well as financial reports, what needs to be included, what is the right way of doing it, and so on. So to begin, so 30 days prior to the report due date, you would receive, and by now, since your final reports are due by June 30th, you should have received an email that looks something like this, a report reminder email. This email is auto-generated by our grants portal, Foundant, and if you notice, the subject line indicates the report that is coming up, that is due, and it is addressed to the applicant. The applicant is the person that submitted the application and happens to be our first point of contact. And that is why it is extremely important that we are updated in the event that that person is no longer with the organization, or that person's role changes. Otherwise, these emails will keep going to that individual, and whoever is responsible or who took over the reporting aspect of it will not be getting the notifications. The two reports that are required for direct effect are the interim report and the final report. The interim is the 6-month progress update, and the final is an all-inclusive reporting on the project. The email subject line indicates the final report that is due. In addition, we offer grants portal link to Foundant. If you have any issues logging in with the passwords or any technical difficulties, please refer to us through this email, QOL@ChristopherReeve.org. In addition, we indicate here, as you will see, I indicated in various places, that this is extremely important if you have a budget revision, and it stands to reason you only have 30 days to submit the report. So the expectation is all of the budget related issues have now been resolved. That said, if you do need a budget revision, please to contact me. Do not submit the report until the budget revision has been in place and all financial issues have been resolved. Okay, so once you log into the portal, you will see this screen to Foundant, and the username is again to the designated person that is assigned in Foundant by us, who's usually the applicant unless we are otherwise told to change. Once you log in to Foundant, the next screen you will see is your dashboard. So this is what you will see on the dashboard. It looks, it provides you your contact name, your organization. It shows you the status of your application, and it shows you 2 reports that were assigned. The fact that this shows the status of complete indicates that the interim report, and it stands to reason because now you will be submitting your final report. The indication of complete here indicates that your interim was done and now you are about to do your final report, as it is also shown here, edit. Edit means this is something that you need to complete. So once you click on that edit, please notice that the status says assigned. So if we move to the next phase, once you click edit, you would be seeing these questions. So the project name, amount awarded, and project types are pulled in from the application itself. So that is pre-filled. You don't need to fill that out. You will see it. The next item is the project completion. Has the project been completed, including full expenditures of funds and evaluations and outcome measures? If the answer to this question is yes, meaning that it's completed, you have 0 balance remaining, and there's no outstanding issues, then you would indicate yes under this section and put NA in this section. If, however, your response is no, because the evaluation and outcome measures are not yet completed, then indicate no under project completion, and in the explanation, provide a statement as to why it is not completed. If there is a balance remaining for any reason, and that is the reason for indicating no, I'd say to everyone, stop, in caps, stop, do not go any further. this is where you need to contact me immediately so that all related issues regarding the budget can be resolved before the report is submitted. If you submit a report with an outstanding balance, all you're doing is you're giving me the report for me to reject it and you to correct it and fill it out again. So I stress that you not go any further from this point if there's balance remaining, because you will save a lot of time. The next set of questions are related to the project accomplishments and project measures. As you respond to these questions, please keep in mind that the intent of the final report is to provide an all-inclusive accounting of the refunded amount in both the narrative as well as the financial expenditures. As it relates to the proposed or revised goals or any other changes in scope, for example, everything is relative. For completion of these items and all the questions that follow, you will need to refer to your application, your revision documents, if there were any revisions, as well as your interim report. Because in as much as, you're reporting the annual status here, what I usually see is interim on any of these questions. I discourage you from doing that, again, because that will disqualify the report, because for audit purposes, this will be the report of record and it should be all inclusive. So please make sure you don't indicate interim. Project accomplished, accomplishments.
Could I jump in for a second?
Sure.
So Samantha just actually sent a question about the previous slide, and she says, how do we reply to completion question if we expended all the CRF funds and collected all the data, but did not achieve the portions of the project that other foundations were supposed to fund?
For purposes of this reporting, you are to report only on those proposed goals that were meant for the refunding. So if the overreaching goal was to serve 30 people and our funding was a fraction of the overall project cost, where through calculation, it comes out that we would be funding 10 people. If you have accomplished the project and served 10 people using refunding, you have satisfied our, our requirement. Where the 30 total was not met, it was outside of refunding, and we are not going to ask you anything about that. We're just concerned about what we funded.
Yeah,
I hope that's clear.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And maybe another response to that could be, Samantha, that let's say this was a playground and you purchased, your funds were to purchase a piece of equipment, and you purchased that, let's say it was a merry-go-round, an accessible merry-go-round, but other parts of the playground have not yet been completed. You would just report on that one piece that that we funded. And Samantha said that is clear. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So coming back to project accomplishments. So this question asks, what has been accomplished relative to what was proposed, original or revised? For example, if a grant proposed to replace a ramp for safe access to the organization's client services area for people with paralysis, a sample response would look something like the accessibility ramp has been purchased and installed to ensure safe access to the client service area. The next item is project measures. Our motto is, if you include it, you need to measure it and report it. So this entails two components. One is known as the output and the other is the outcome. So output is a number, like an increase in the number of people served. And outcome is a change in someone's attitude, knowledge, behavior, like an increase in someone's knowledge about a topic or a higher level of satisfaction, happiness, quality of life, etc. So continuing with the previous ramp example, if the applicant for that grant included measurable results like clients served, the number of therapy sessions provided, and self-reported surveys, for example. So their output number or response would look like 50 people with paralysis received 500 therapy sessions, for example. For their output, the response would look like 96% of respondents reported a positive impact on their overall health and wellness, and 100% respondents reported services received had a positive impact on social interactions, for example. All right, so next slide. Ooh, sorry. sorry. As you can tell, I'm a beginner, first timer. Let's see, next two questions. Yeah, the next one, this one. I apologize. So the next three questions relate to the total actual impact. The actual number of individuals served relative to the number proposed. This number should not be less than what was reported at interim. For example, you can't at interim say thus far you've served 10 people with paralysis, and in the final you say in total we served 4 people. If there was an error in reporting either the expenses or the number of people served or anything like that, please to correct it at final reporting and either reach out to me via email or make the statement on the final report that what was reported at interim was in error. And the correct information is as follows, and so on. So if we continue with the ramp example from before, let's say direct impact, the response was 50 people living with paralysis were served by this project. This number is slightly higher than expected 48, let's say, or originally proposed. This information is based on registration. So if an organization uses registration to log in or to track the number of individuals served, that's where they would reference client registration. For indirect, it could be 0 if the services offered by the organization were not impacting the caregivers or family members. So depending on what the services are and what was proposed, the response in this section should follow. Now, the long-term impact, what we're looking for here is, yes, we funded you X amount to do X, Y, and Z to serve so many people. Beyond our funding, what is the expected impact? If we gave you an equipment and the questionnaire gives an example of 20 people served and there's a calculation. So for my ramp example, since they serve 50 people annually, the ramp is anticipated to last, let's say 10 years. At least 450 people living with paralysis are expected to benefit from this project beyond the grant year. And the calculation would be 50 clients served per year times 10 years, the expected life of the ramp, which equals 500. to be served, less 50, which were served during the first grant period of our funding. And the result would be 450. So that is the calculation you would follow. And you could track that by the example that's given on the report itself. Next slide.
So,
Okay,
Parul, I had a question. What
Sure.
if somebody has a grant for a caregiving project? And how would they report? Because the people that they're serving are more so the caregivers than the person living with paralysis. How would they report on that?
Correct. So caregivers is slightly different from your other traditional grants because caregiver now becomes the directly impacted number because they are directly receiving the caregiving services offered by the organization. So if they gave those services to 20 people, they would identify 20 individuals as the directly impacted individuals. So, and to be fair though, I have not rejected a final report if they indicated that number in indirect. I understand the confusion, but just to be clear, since we're talking about it, that would be the correct way to indicate number, the direct number for caregivers. Okay, so the next section is near and dear to my heart, financial reporting. And I need to mention right here, right now, that the expense file is the #1 reason for rejecting the submitted report. Either the folks are redoing the pre-filled formulas, overwriting, the formulas, or just hard coding a number, and it doesn't conform to what was originally approved or revised. They changed the quantities from what was originally approved. They changed the total cost, or they changed what was actually approved. There's a whole slew of reasons why the reports are being rejected because the expenses are not properly, or they don't tie to what is the current balance or the current approved budget of record. So before we get to the expense file, these are the questions. Well, this is a section that you would upload your Excel file. So the Excel, it has to be any expenditures related to our funding must be uploaded through an Excel formatted file. We don't accept PDF, we don't accept CSV, we don't take any other format but Excel. So each Excel file must be the latest approved budget, expenses, as well as the balance remaining, line by line. If the approved budget had purchased 5 wheelchairs, this file needs to show purchase 5 wheelchairs. So again, in the description, the quantity and the amount. And the balance remaining must be 0. I cannot stress that enough. Because believe it or not, I do get files with funding remaining, and final report submission is not the time to ask for financial, revisions. This needs to happen because by definition, the final report is the closing of the project. And you're reporting on something that is now going to be closed. So everything needs to be finalized as per the proposal. So,
and also that makes a whole lot of sense, Pearl. You're right, because the grant ends a month prior to that. So, let's say in this case, everything closed on May 31st, you then have a month. So at the close date, you should have already had any budget revisions or any kind of changes, presented to us for approval. And please remember that they need to come to us for approval. And, Parul will look at them and will, make a decision based on what's presented to us beforehand.
So because the incidence of errors on this file is to the degree that it is, this is the first form I look at. If the budget doesn't match, or if there's a balance remaining, I have no other choice but to revert the report to draft, and the applicant will need to resubmit it with the correct file. And there's a lot of downtime, right? Because now I've looked at it, I've reverted it, the person has to go re-edit it and resubmit. So it goes back in the queue again. The next thing included in this slide is the download template. Although we include this link to the template, please note that this is just a template, a blank Excel form with 6 budget categories, which we fund under. You can use this blank form to fill out approved budget info that was approved and attached as Appendix A with the grant agreement, if you're not able to locate a copy of the current budget. So that's the only purpose that it will serve you. So it's best to maintain an updated file, from whether it's from your award, from your interim report, from the revision file that I give you, any, file that you have, you should always maintain a copy, because you will get to a point where, whether it's interim or final, you're going to need to submit an Excel file. And again, this is another place where we mention budget revisions. So this is just yet another reminder. I think it's the third one. Okay, so this is a sample of what that template looks like. So we modified the format a little bit, but not the content. So if the file you have right now doesn't look exactly like this, it will not be a problem. Just make sure that the approved amount and the descriptions line by line match to the most current approved budget. This is just the extension of that previous file, last 2 categories.
And Parul, we're getting a few questions, but we're not going to answer them yet, because I'm 99.9% sure Parul's going to answer them in this. So at the end, though, we'll go through just to make sure that she has, and we'll go over the questions. But I'll just, so from now on, especially during this reporting section, we'll just let Parul, because I have a feeling she's going to answer these questions.
I promise you, my intent is to go through this in as much detail as possible to avoid any questions. So at least that's my hope and intent. So, all right. All right. So here is an example of the most current approved budget for organization X. So here, well, maybe I shouldn't say X. You'll see why not X. Organization ABC. So please note that the total cost of this project is $16,000. The requested amount as per the proposal was $12,000. And the approved amount was $10,000 to purchase and install a ramp. So that's why you see 3 different amounts. This is something that would be attached, these 2 would be attached to the application, and this column added would be included in the grant agreement. So any file, expense file, should have this column as your originating column. This is the approved amount from the Reeve Foundation. Okay. If for this budget approved $10,000, they provided this expense file, I would have to reject it. Because as you can see, all they did was they took the total cost and reworded the column to approved amount, when in fact, we only approved 10,000. So this would have to be rejected, and then there's no, itemized expenditures listed here. So this would not work for us. They, on the other hand, if they provided this expense file, this would not work either, because although the approved amount is 10,000, guess what? There's balance remaining. We can't do this. So again, this would be rejected. However, if they submitted this file, this would be in line with what we would accept. So 10,000 amount was funded for the purchase and installation of the ramp. Expenditures as of June is this, balance remaining is 0, perfect. This is what we expect. So I just want to be clear and pleased to ask, but again, like Mark said, we'll wait until the end of this to address the questions. So let's take another example. Say this $10,000 budget was revised. So in this example, if they got a $500 discount, let's say, for the ramp from the vendor, and they requested, and we pre-authorized this budget revision back on January 15th, where we reallocated the funds, 500 into personnel and kept 9,500 in the equipment piece. Also, please note that the total budget revised amount is also 10,000, and the approved amount originally was also 10,000. We didn't just revise the 500, we revised the entire budget. And this is how we follow all revisions. All revisions must equal the approved amount bottom line. You may change categories into change from equipment to other to personnel and so on. You need to obtain a pre-authorization and work up the budget where the approved amount originally equals approved amount revised. I hope that's clear. So for that revision, if this is the expense file that was submitted, this file would not work because this is not the most updated budget. This is the original budget. Yes, yeah, the amount approved is 10,000, but it's not revised as per, the revision from January, where 500 went in personnel and 9,500 remained in equipment. So on the other hand, if this is the file that was submitted, great. This is what it should look like. As you can see, all the lines match up, the budget match up, and the remaining balance is 0. So the next question is to include project changes. Here is.
I'm sorry, Parul. I'm wondering if maybe because some of these questions are more about the finance piece, we'll answer them here. Yeah, so let's do that. So first of all, the one question that came in said, and I'm sorry, this doesn't have a name. It says anonymous, and I don't fully understand it. The question, but so if the grant is for an ongoing program that helps cover expenses for this particular period of time, how do you recommend calculating the number of people living with paralysis who will be served beyond the grant year for the long-term impact question? I understand how this would work for the ramp example, where the ramp is purchased during the grant year and continues to be used in future years, but I'm less clear how it would work for a program project with ongoing costs.
Okay, so for ongoing costs, I'm assuming you have a year-to-date served number. If not, you would start day one with our funding and start tracking or recording as per the proposal what your mechanism was going to be, right? Because our proposal, our application asks individual applications, each application requires you to fill out the number of direct and indirect individuals to be served, right? So, and then we also asked about where you came up with this number. So if you have an ongoing program and the calendar starts when we funded you, right? From that point forward to the 12 months, you would need to somehow track the number of individuals served. And then calculate, well, if annually I'm able to serve 100 people with the services, ongoing services that I'm providing, right? For the next 10 years, and state that if you have just the services, the equipment I can see has a depreciation life and you can easily calculate. I get that. But if you don't have an equipment and it's an intangible like a service, then you will just state whether we estimate X number of people to be served based on this annual number for these services. And you indicate the number of years that you are extending to. We don't have a definite, but I would say at minimum, just put 5 years, make that as a standard to report that at this rate for these continuous services, we foresee serving X number of people based on X number served in the grant period. I hope that's clear.
Okay, great. And if I thought so, I understood the question once you answered it. And so the next question, and if it's not, then please, write back in the comments. But so Beth is asking if we know the program budget is more than the amount asked for and granted by the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, how should we complete the Excel report to show a zero balance? We expect there may be a balance sort of satisfied by other funders. Okay,
so if your total cost of the project is $1 million, and I'm going to go all out, right? $1 million divided into all of these 6 categories. But for direct effect, the maximum we can fund is $25,000, and we only gave you $25,000 to purchase the equipment. All right, in your application, hopefully, we've identified which equipment, or it doesn't have to be, I'm just using equipment as a sample, as an example, but it could be in personnel, whatever lines that were identified in the proposal and approved that total that $25,000. Once those expenses have been expensed, you have 100% satisfied our requirement to report on that $25,000, irrespective of whether you have completed the 9 million that's remaining. We only care about the $25,000. We understand life happens, right? We have supply chain issues. Things are costing more than what was anticipated at the time of the application. So you got another grant, and now the $10,000 equipment became $12,000. So all I'm saying is, if it would be best, ideal situation is you report 10,000 budget against 10,000 expense. Because we understand, I'm just going to assume that you got the 2,000 difference from elsewhere, because you have to be. Because we didn't fund the additional 2,000. We only gave you 10,000. So if it's in excess of what we funded you and you want to include that, that's fine. But the ideal situation is you should keep the expenses equal to the funded amount, just to keep everything clean.
Great. And the next 3 questions are practically all the same thing, so I won't really go into them. But Diana, the question that you posed, I think that was the answer to that, as well as she was saying if when we received our funding, we ordered the correct quantity from the grant request, but the cost had increased. So we covered the additional cost from our own funds. In that case, do you just want us to put the grant award amount in the expense, since we did spend it all, plus some of our own funds? And the other one is a very similar question too, where what if our expenses were higher than the approved amount and we just absorbed the cost? Do you want to see this?
We don't report on excessive cost. We only report on what was funded. Therefore, we only require you to report on expenses relative to the funding. So if your budget was $25,000 and you incurred $30,000 in total, you don't need to report on the $5,000 differential. You just need to report against the $25,000 funded lines by the Reeve Foundation.
Okay. There's a few more, and I know we have other slides, but let's go through these two just quickly. So can we remove line items that were not approved by the CRF? Example, removing other grant or funding items.
Absolutely, and that would be seen. A lot of people have issues in obtaining their budget, although it is included as an attachment, Appendix A, within the grant agreement. Whoever is in charge of managing that grant agreement should give you access to that, agreement if it's only those budgeted, budgeted pages. If not, you can always reach out to us. And generally, the approved budget is a match to what was requested on the application. But if there were revisions, you can confirm that and we can give you a budget file. That's not a problem.
All right, great. And just to let you know that one of the earlier questions about the long-term number, the administration said thank you that yes, you answered that.
Most welcome. No problem.
That said, you answered that. Now there's a question here from Shay. Hey Shay, how are you? Nice to not to see you, but kind of see you on this. Shay's question is a little more difficult. So Shay, I'm going to ask you to actually send this directly to me, and you and I can talk about this offline if that's okay. All right, and then just one more that I think is here in the Katie is saying, I shifted money from the equipment line to another line item. Does that need to be approved prior to submission?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You should always check before actually incurring the expense, only because we are mandated by ACL to keep these trackings and making sure that everything ticks and ties. So.
All right, and I think we're good. Yeah, let's go on.
Okay, now I lost my place. I know this is a conspiracy, right? Because given that this is my first time. Okay,
we
hold
want
on.
to throw her off a little bit.
I know, absolutely. I think I was here.
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
Project changes.
Okay, so these two questions, project changes and challenges. For project changes, here is where you would note any changes to the project. It could be in the way that the program was delivered. A lot of people, pivoted from direct services, person to person, to online, for example. Budget changes, no cost, but please remember, any changes to the projects that are being made, make sure you get a pre-authorization for that. And for that, you can send it directly to me, ppatel@christopherreeve.org. If there were no changes, you would just indicate NA here and just move to the next section, which is challenges. This is where you want to highlight the difficulties encountered during the completion of this project, and indicate how you were able to overcome them. For example, we were unable to purchase proposed equipment X because it was no longer available. After consulting multiple manufacturers, we were able to find a similar equipment Y, let's say, with a slight difference in pricing. After getting pre-authorization for this change from the foundation, notice how I say these things? We made the purchase. So that's an example of these, responses to the changes and the challenges.
And I just want to add why it's so important for the challenges. And there's another section coming up, lessons learned. We learn a lot from you guys when you put in these challenges, and it helps us think about other grants that are, applications that come in, so that we can kind of be, looking out for them. So if you say that you had a challenge with outreach because of X, Y, and Z, the next time a project comes in like yours, we'll think about that and go, oh, okay, you know what? Let's talk to them about some of the challenges this other group had, and maybe we can steer them in a different direction, or in a direction where they can really start to plan and prepare just in case.
Absolutely. And on a personal level, I use it for guidance. Oftentimes I get, situations where the folks are saying, you know what, they had actually planned on 12-week-long sessions, but they're finding out their lack of commitment because of, 12 long. The length of commitment is long. Not everybody's willing to participate for all of those sessions. So I had another situation, where they were going through the similar case, and based on what the other grantee was doing, I was able to provide guidance to this, similar organization with similar issues. So it helps us a lot. Okay, the next piece. This is the last of the reporting sections. It has to do with collaborations, lessons learned, and additional materials. So collaborations is where you would list, for example, other organizations or community groups that contributed to the success of your project, and how will this impact your future projects. By way of example, if an organization had fabulous outreach efforts, which led to the formation of a new partnership with an organization ABC. Through this partnership, they can state, we increased awareness of the services offered by our organizations. Our list of clients and demand for our services increased by X percentage. We were able to serve X number of people in addition to what was originally anticipated. We will continue to build upon this partnership beyond the grant period, for example. The next section has to do with lessons learned. This is where you would identify the knowledge gained through the project that you were not aware of prior to the start of the project, for example, like available resources, or in your proposal, did you overestimate something? Did you underestimate something? Did you not anticipate something? So those are the kind of lessons learned that would go here. So additional collaboration, for example, has had a significant impact on our program by increasing the demand for the services we provide. To ensure continuous delivery of the program and services, we will need to seek out additional funding and resources from other organizations, for example. So because this organization has realized that their demand has increased, they would need to make arrangements, otherwise they'll have a waiting list. Challenges, collaborations, and lessons learned are meant to encourage forward thinking and to bring light to what worked well, what didn't work so well. And hopefully that'll enable you as the organization to maximize the success of all your future projects. Like I said, I use this information to offer guidance to other grantees who may be facing similar challenges. And let's see, the bottom section, additional, oh, I did it again. I did it again.
She's jumping ahead here. Well, we do have about 9 minutes left, and I will definitely fill this out. And we do have some more questions. So
so just one last thing. Additional materials is where you would upload, any photographs, videos, or any fabulous things that you need to share about the project with the foundation.
Yeah,
and I guess that concludes concludes my reporting piece. So
we have some questions. We still have some questions for you, Parul. So,
okay.
So Carolee has a few. She said, when you discuss the approval process for switching funding process, is a phone conversation with you enough for approval, or does this need to be in writing?
No, all approvals must be in writing, only because ACL expects documentation. And it's always a good practice for audit trail. I may be here today, I may be gone tomorrow, only God knows. So, anyone stepping in my place should be able to backtrack and figure out what the changes were and what led to those changes.
Yeah, definitely. And this other piece, okay, and so we just answered that. And so by funding process, this is Carolee again, I meant funding category. For example, moving requested funds from in-person events to equipment because of COVID related restrictions. So those are the types of things that you would definitely need to talk to us about. Just to make sure that it stays within the scope of the project. So, we're always willing to work with you guys on any of these changes that do come up, because we understand that they always happen.
And I just want to add that as you think of these revisions, you have to be able to answer a couple of questions that may relate to the project. By making this change, am I going to be impacting the number of people served, for example? How does this impact the overall program? Does it impact the overall program, and in what capacity?
Samantha has a question. Additional documentation, can we repeat the documents sent in the interim, or does it need to be new?
Can you give me an example of that document?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if you've presented something like a brochure or a flyer in the interim, and it were for the overall project, I think it would be great to see it, but we'd already have it on hand. So we'd have it on the file and we'd have seen it and, shared it. But, we do share a lot of, your brochures and pictures and all of those things to, ACL as well. They love, seeing your videos, your pictures and all of that. And I think the last question here is, although we have ordered our equipment and spent all the funds, and we hear this all the time, the equipment is on significant back order due to supply chain issues. How should we report on the measures and impact since they won't be realized until a later date? Thank you, Lisa. This is a really important question.
So ACL has been approached by the foundation has been speaking in constant communication with ACL, and they are aware of the current situation. So during these times where supply chain has impacted the impact piece of the application, they are willing to let us close the project pending receipt of the impact information when you as an organization have it available. So if you tell me, yes, the funding has been fully expensed, all the invoices have been paid, the only thing missing is we don't have the impact data, I would say submit the report. And then when I send you a closeout email, and I'm just putting it out there also, in addition to the closeout email, I'm just making everyone aware that the expectation on our end is once that data is available, that it would be forwarded and shared with the Reeve Foundation.
All right, and the last thing is Samantha just got back to us on that, where she was saying pictures of, it would be like pictures of horses or the newsletter that she already submitted. So if you sent those through the interim, that's fine. You don't need to repeat those.
In my review, one of the things I do look at is the attached documents, and if there's something that's that's amazing, or I do bring it to Mark's attention, and it is shared through the communications team on our website and with ACL.
Yeah, and that's another point too, is, we look at all of your interim reports and really, kind of pull out what's happening. We'll see if there are issues that need to be addressed, and we'll work with you on those. But we also take that opportunity to see what projects we think are really doing super work and that are moving, forward. And a lot of times we end up doing grantee spotlights. This is something that we just started doing. We've completed our first 8, and they're all on our website right now, and we're redesigning our website, so there'll be a new place where you'll be able to see those. But they're stories written by a journalist who has gone and done a little more delving into the work that you guys do. So we read everything, and when they're really exciting like that, we just pass them along to our communications team. We pass those along everywhere that we can. And the last question, because I see that we are at 3:58, so there could be one more after this, who knows. Lisa is asking, should these requests be forwarded via email or through the portal? And definitely please send everything directly, to Parul.
Via email, please.
Yeah. All right. That's it. That's it for the questions. So I just want to say thank you, not only to all of you, but thank you to Parul. This was her first time doing it. It was excellent, excellent job. So we're just really excited. We're excited to get the the reports from you guys next month. And really, this is Parul, this is her thing. She goes through each and every single one of them. And as you probably all know from already doing your interim reports. So thank you to everybody, and we're looking forward to reading your reports.
Absolutely.
All right, have a great day, everyone, and
Take
thank
care.
you, Parul. Great job.
Welcome.
Bye.
Bye.